Okay, in chapter 25, we're going to be talking about oligopolies. I want to start this by talking about the characteristics of oligopolies, then we'll start into the chapter. Market power, again, the ability to affect market prices by altering output. Barriers to entry, very high in oligopolies. Kink demand curve, and we're going to talk about this as this chapter goes on, but it's a very unique fact that you'll see in oligopolies. There are few firms. Typically, we're looking at no more than 5 that own most of the market. Sticky prices comes back from this kink demand curve. It's just something right now to take note of. There are few substitutes. MR equals MC for the industry is their profit maximizing rule of production. They have a high concentration ratio, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. Non-price competition. This is the first time we've experienced this, and it's because of differentiated products. Their products are not identical. There are competitors here who have slightly different products. They're similar but different. Predatory pricing, which we'll talk about towards the end of the chapter. They do have a long-term economic profit, just like in monopoly. That comes from the fact that there are high barriers. And in oligopolies, one of the distinguishing features is their level of interdependence. They have to worry about what everybody else is doing. And we're going to talk about those things as the chapter goes on, but I wanted to get started on this. Market structure, if you recall, is determined by the number and relative size of the industries involved. If we look right here, there are very few firms that produce most of the output. Therefore, that's what an oligopoly is. Market structure where very few firms produce all or most of the market supply for a particular good. They have a high concentration ratio. When we say concentration ratio, what we're talking about is the percentage of total output produced by the 4 largest. You know, if we look at something like the soft drink industry, there's Pepsi, Coke, and RC. Those are the 3 that everybody thinks of, but in reality, there's lots and lots of manufacturers out there. But a very high percentage of the total output is sold in those 3. That would throw them into the oligopoly market because of that high concentration ratio. It's not that you can't get into the industry, it's that you can't become a dominant player in it. Those dominant players control it. Now, we also have to look at issues with measuring this. There are a couple of problems we need to keep in mind. Number one is the national versus local problem. If you look on a national scale, you'll see that the pizza industry is actually an oligopoly. They have a very high concentration ratio. Domino's, Pizza Hut, and Papa John's basically rule that market on a national level. How about locally? Well, of course not, because there are lots of local makers. There is no real market power locally, but on a national scale, that concentration ratio would indicate that there is. The reality is, most of the pizza type restaurants aren't on a national level, so they don't match up when you look at a nation as a whole. And they also overlooks the idea of cooperatives, where many small people are working together. And you'll see that in the farming industry, things like the American Dairy Association, the Beef Association, Florida Orange Growers, things of that nature. So those are a couple of issues we need to keep in mind. All right, now we'll start going into oligopoly behavior in this next section.